Hi, this is part 2 of my review featuring Slugfest, solo and cooperative super gaming. If you haven't seen part 1, please check out the link in the description below, it will take you to that video. It will make more sense if you watch that first, of course, because you have all of the basic rules, the information how to build a team of superheroes, etc. In this second part, we're going to talk about the scenarios, some finer points concerning the rules, the ways in which you can tweak the existing system, and many other things. So following the information how to create your headline hero, you had all of those details that I mentioned on part 1 concerning how to build your team of superheroes to fight alongside your main headline hero, and it's very easy to create an entire team quite quickly. You have these templates to create various heroes of different ranks with all of their attributes, the information on how many powers to choose, the number of skill points that they get, so that you can pick different skills quite quickly depending on the type of superhero that you are building. So it's very simple to modify all of these templates to come up with a team that goes in accordance with the type of story that you want to create. You also have pre-built superheroes, entire teams, such as the Revengers, founded from the ashes of another team of the same name from World War II. Captain Phoenix gathered the Revengers to counter the mounting superhuman threats the world now faces. But if you want to play as a team of supervillains, or if you want some original adversaries, you also have a villainous team, the Villain Mission Force. Selling their services to the highest bidder, this group of sometimes supercriminals is led by the enigmatic Mr. Jagudar. So these different teams have various superheroes and villains, and if you want to, you can reconfigure your team lineup between issue chapters, that is, the scenarios that you're going to be playing. Once you have finished your post-battle sequence, we will talk more about that later on, you can reassign your team ranks to new members. If you remove a member from your current roster, their advances, which are kind of like the things that you obtain as you level up, remain, and you can return them to your roster in a subsequent issue. So these heroes and villains will become more powerful as they take on different challenges and battles. You can also switch out gear for your characters. The normal limit of 2 items per character still applies, of course, and you also have information concerning team-ups, 2-in-1s, and buddy books. Dynamic duos are a staple of comic books. So what do you do if you want to play a series that focuses on just 2 heroes as your main characters? You can treat these situations a bit like cooperative games, but with a twist. First, you build 2 headline heroes as if you were playing a cooperative game with another player. But the difference here is that you convert your 6 allotted team ranks into extra uses of the Fate power at 3-to-1. So for example, with each hero having 6 ranks, those heroes will start with 2 extra uses of Fate. Combining this with the normal Fate point that your hero starts with, you have a total of 3 Fate points for each of these dynamic duo sort of heroes. In terms of the game turn, you simply activate one of your characters in the headline hero phase and one in the teammates phase. Once you establish an order, you stick to it. If one of your headline heroes goes down, the other automatically activates in every headline hero phase. If you pull a heroic search card, you can switch up their activation order if you want. 2 example heroes are included in this section, so that you can get started right away. Next we have a section featuring series and issues. This is a story-based skirmish miniature game. This works as a combination of wargame and role-playing game. You play a series of scenarios, they are linked together in a complete campaign, and depending on the outcome of those scenarios, you will take on particular situations that stem or branch out from the outcomes of past battles. So you could think of this series as a collection of linked games, and within that collection your issues are the chapters that make the overall plot. This core rulebook contains 3 complete multi-issue series. These are medium to short length campaigns, it depends, and 2 one-shots that you can play if you are in the mood for a quick game. So if you want a lengthy experience, you have those campaigns, and if you want to set up a game for an evening's entertainment, you have those one-shot games that you can easily modify in different ways. So this core rulebook contains several scenarios that can be mixed and matched together if you want to add to the replayability. You can take elements from the mission objectives, from the goals, the events that will occur as you are drawing cards in each scenario, and it's very easy for you to create your own campaigns, your own scenarios. If you need some inspiration or ideas, of course you could read some comic books, watch some superhero cartoons or animated shows, movies, but I'm also going to put a link in the description below that will take you to some Game Master emulator or adventure generators that could come in handy. I think it would be a great idea when you're creating your own scenarios to determine the different enemies and situations, making some random rolls in your tables of choice, or using the included elements in this rulebook, as well as the different events when you are drawing cards to come up with your own original experiences. You have information here on how to build issues, the description of the plot, the primary action, all of the overall elements, the miniatures that you need for a particular issue, the setup, the map, how to build a plot deck with some cards that could bring some negative or positive things into the battlefield. Maybe the enemies get reinforcements. Maybe you have that heroic surge and suddenly your hero is filled with hope and power. Or maybe a piece of terrain or element within this scenario or the battlefield will have some negative effects or positive effects upon specific or randomly determined participants in the fight. Now there could be some issues or scenarios during which your heroes have eliminated all of the opposing forces for that section of the fight and they are apparently left with nothing else to do. However, you can use your skills, you make a check and you get different positive things if you are successful at those checks. So for example, if you have the athletics skill, you could make a check to see if you gain an extra move action on your next activation. If you make a medicine roll, you could recover hit points. If one of your heroes is successful at a side tech check, you could reshuffle a spent heroic search card back into the plot reveal deck. So in those scenarios in which you are waiting for an event to happen, instead of feeling that there are dead turns in which there are no enemies to fight, you are thankful for those turns because now you can get to make those checks and prepare for the next wave of enemies. You also have information on the special rules, different instructions, changes in stat blocks, skill rolls that you need to make on the different scenarios, and the epilogue section, which covers any lingering effects from the issue and potential rewards for your superhero characters. When it comes to campaign play or linked scenario play, your heroes and villains will grow in power as they clear out different battles. If this were to be compared to a video game, you could consider linked scenario play as the story mode and the one-shot scenarios included as versus CPU or arcade mode perhaps. Now when it comes to the post-battle sequence after you finish each scenario, you set about resolving the fates of the fallen, sorting out your team's story arc, moving on to the next issue in your series. This game crosses that somewhat blurry line between skirmish game and roleplay experience effectively. So you have phase 1, the fate of the fallen. Depending on the role, your knocked out heroes or villains, depending on who you are playing as, could end up dead or destroyed. Or maybe you only get a grievous injury, or you are wounded, or maybe you are lucky on your survival roll. This is a survival check that you make and you get an instantaneous full recovery. And obviously any injuries or wounds will present penalties in upcoming fights. So it's much better to employ good strategies and tactics so that you end up with minimum damage during each fight. Now when it comes to building your legends, your heroes, your team of superheroes or supervillains, you earn story points depending on the things that you accomplish, the goals that you reach in each scenario. Maybe you rescue someone, maybe you protect something, maybe you recover an object, maybe you take control of a place. This provides you with story points that you can spend on your stats and your skills. Maybe you want more speed, more fight, more resolve, more hit points, another skill added to your skill repertoire. You get to pick if you want to roll on the stat skill bumps table or on the power bumps table, and you randomly get a reward. So this is quite exciting. You can't wait to see what your hero is going to get as a level up or advance. There are also rules to scale the opposition, the villains, so that there is no snowballing effect in which one side simply keeps on winning and winning and winning and they just become too powerful and the other side does not present an adequate challenge. Now I'm going to give you a brief description of the campaign and scenarios that are included to keep things spoiler free. I think it is much more enjoyable for you to experience the surprises, plot twists and events when you draw cards, because otherwise you may feel a bit tempted to create a specialized team of superheroes or supervillains that can take on the different specific issues and scenarios. They contain different battlefields, different elements within the fields that are more easy to overcome for particular villains and superheroes depending on their powers, their skills, their gear. It's a lot more fun to create a team of superheroes with various skills, powers and abilities and gear to take on many different situations, especially when it comes to some campaign objectives. They are much more easy to reach for heroes with powers related to that terrain, to those enemies, to the situation at hand. The first campaign is Revengers, the Bedlam Affair. Little do the Revengers know it, but their old foe, Count Bedlam, is back in town and planning his biggest scheme yet. Tired of constantly relying on superpowered underlings who fail him, the cunning Baron has hatched a plan to make himself into a Superman. Several weeks ago, he contacted recently retired supervillain Bruiser Benning to help him break out 2 other villains from Grand Island State Prison. After offering to increase Bruiser's waning super strength tenfold, Bedlam smiled wolfishly as the loutish brawler agreed. In the ensuing 2 weeks, Bruiser engineered the escapes of both the spiteful Spinner and the Aztec energy wielder, Tonali. Then Bedlam introduced them to his associate, ex-Nazi scientist Hans Henkel. The next campaign is Revengers, Knights of a Future Imperfect. While battling their old foes, the Time Can and his hordes of Plastine men, one of the Revengers members involuntarily communes with their future self. Sent from an Earth 20 years into the future, the essence of this now seasoned hero inhabits its younger self and delivers a message of warning about a dire destiny soon awaiting the Revengers and the world. It was only the ambient chronal energies emitted by the Time Can that allowed this future Revenger to home in on their past comrades. The next campaign is Revengers, Quest for the Cure. A group of mutated scientists begs the Revengers for help in restoring their humanity. To do so, the group must seek aid from old enemies, while a more sinister threat looms in the background. Now, before we talk about the one-shots, let me tell you about the things that you will encounter in these campaigns without spoiling anything. Depending on what happens at the end of each issue or scenario, the other issues connected by the campaign, by the plotline, will change. New elements will be introduced, and you can play each of these campaigns as standalone campaigns. Each campaign contains different scenarios or issues, but it's also quite easy to link all of the campaigns together into a massive series of adventures. In all of these different campaigns, all of the issues contained within each campaign, you will find different elements concerning the scenery, the battlefield. You will fight on land or sea. You will have to rescue hostages. You will have to protect someone. You will have to attack someone. You may need to deactivate some mechanisms. You will fight in the streets, in secret bases, and in more natural environments. There is a satisfying level of complexity to each of the issues, especially when it comes to how each issue connects with the other issues in the same campaign. The artificial intelligence easily applies to each of the objectives, the goals, the obstacles, the prizes within each of these scenarios, so it's quite easy to fall into the illusion that you are fighting against living opponents instead of AI-controlled adversaries. And it's definitely a lot of fun to create your team of superheroes or supervillains without knowing what lies ahead. I would highly recommend that you do not spoil yourself, that you do not read too much into the scenario. You create your team of superheroes or supervillains first. Try to specialize each member for different situations to handle different events and encounters by choosing useful powers and gear. That way, when you need to protect a non-player character or go deep into enemy territory to recover something, you will have at the very least 1 or 2 characters that are up to the task. Now let me give you more details concerning the two one-shot issues or scenarios. The first one is Super Brawl. In a few moments I am going to show you a complete battle report featuring this issue. This is the perfect scenario to play if you don't have too much time to start a new series, if you just want to play a short and fun game. So this is very easy to play with any miniatures that you want to use or any figures. You have a list of different enemy templates or archetypes that you can use to generate an opposing force right away. You have the Blaster, the Brick, the Technomancer, the Brawler, the Mentalist. It's also very easy to modify any of these templates. There are also details on how to make things a bit harder for you. Maybe you are using a team of superheroes that has leveled up, so here you have information how to add ranks to the enemies. The setup is also fairly simple. It's a 3x3 feet board. You place an objective at the center. This represents the penultimate magnifier. This is an objective that is mainly used as a focus for the enemy AI to target during the different actions, the different attacks and movements. You also have two decks, so there's some replayability to this scenario. The first deck will present some encounters, some events such as enemy reinforcements, maybe the loved ones of one of the heroes are threatened, maybe the magnifier strikes someone on the battlefield. The other deck is a bit more different. Maybe you find a toga wearing Space God. Maybe you suffer an unexpected transformation, and perhaps one of the enemy characters is an old friend or an old flame of one of your heroes, and depending on the result of the check, that character could end up on your force, on your side of the battlefield. The other one-shot scenario is Havoc in the Hazard Chamber. One of your old foes, the Rapacious Repairman, has wanted revenge on your team since you foiled his last big caper. While you stopped his bid to reroute all of Atlantic City's July 4th weekend casino revenue to his Swiss account, the repairman escaped and has since been planning some payback. So now he has infiltrated the training area or training grounds of your heroes, and he has taken over because, being a repairman, the training equipment, the artificial enemies contained in these training grounds are now out to get you. So you will have to fight against sparring partner bots and the repairman himself. This is going to take place on a 2x2 board, representing your team's hazard chamber or the training area. So all of the events have to do with traps and hazards of these training grounds. Maybe some walls fall around your character and you end up walled in, or maybe you suffer an infrasonic assault, or maybe more spar bots will enter the battle. You will also have to contend with the difficult environment. That is, all of the training grounds count as difficult ground. It's going to be very difficult to navigate the area. And there's also a big stumpy robot as well. And the cool thing is that both of these one-shot issues or scenarios have information on story point awards. So you get points for defeating specific enemies, for achieving different things during the events that are produced by drawing cards. So you can start a campaign if you want to. You could use these one-shots as the platform for an entire campaign. Near the end of the book, you have lots and lots of templates and example heroes and villains. You also have information to create an implacable foe. That is, if you want a battle against a juggernaut sort of opponent, you can create this powerful enemy that can take on an entire group of superheroes. So these templates and example characters are great. If you want enemies, just look for the appropriate ranks of enemies depending on the scenario and just choose them and modify them however you like. Or if you need allies or a headline hero, you will also find them here. And at the end of the book, you have optional rules and game aids. For example, you have an optional rule to make tougher player characters by giving them more fate, more hit points, creating powerful teams, skillful teams as well. That is, you start with more skill points. You also have information how to use maps, grids, and hexes if you want to use your HeroClix maps for this game. You have all the information here concerning squares, or if you're using some sort of other map, you can also use hexes with all of the information concerning melee, knockback, ranged combat, etc. You also have a quick reference sheet with the game turn sequence, the description of actions, movement, combat, different roles and notes. So you have everything in one place and you do not need to go to specific sections of the rulebook constantly. And the roster sheet for your group of characters is pretty neat too. Now, I present to you my battle report featuring the one-shot scenario Super Brawl. So, for this scenario I came up with the story that the Masters of Evil were attacking the headquarters of the Fantastic Four. They were after the penultimate magnifier, which actually surpasses the ultimate nullifier, and Reed Richards noticed that the Masters of Evil were just too powerful in this assault. He decided to teleport a small bunker sort of construct containing the penultimate magnifier to an alternate version of planet Earth, specifically the planet Earth where Street Fighter takes place. So we're going to have a Marvel vs. Capcom sort of situation. The Masters of Evil teleported, chasing after the penultimate magnifier, and now I present to you the participants in this fight. So from left to right, first we have Ryu and Ken. They are almost identical when it comes to their attributes, their powers. However, Ryu is more of a ranged attacker because of his Hadouken, and Ken is going to be better at close quarters combat because of the Dragon Punch. Next we have the leader. He's going to be one of the villains of the Masters of Evil. He is a mentalist. He uses ranged mental attacks. We also have the Hulk because for this scenario I made it so that the Hulk is mind controlled by the leader, like it happened in one of the issues of the Hulk, if I remember correctly. Then we have Mach X. He's going to be using the Technomancer template included in Slugfest. I made it so that the multi-dimensional trip into this version of planet Earth damaged his suit. So he's going to have some trouble activating his gadgets to attack the heroes, Ryu and Ken that is, and his suit cannot fly. This allowed me to use the template immediately with no modifications. Although I did modify a couple of the templates because, for example, I made it so that the Incredible Hulk has a very easy time climbing on top of structures because the Hulk is always climbing and jumping around so easily. Then we have Red Skull with the Brawler archetype. That is, he's very good at dealing damage in close quarters combat, but he's not as durable as the Brick, which would be the role of the Hulk. The Hulk takes a lot of damage, can take a lot of punishment. And at the far right we have the Winter Soldier. He is of the Blaster archetype. He specializes in attacking with his sniper rifle. So here we have the battlefield situation. The battle takes place in an abandoned Shadowloo fortress or base. This was destroyed during an assault led by Guile and Chun-Li. So on one side we have Ryu and Ken. On the other side we have the Masters of Evil. The penultimate magnifier is located at the center of the battlefield. This is going to serve as the focus for the artificial intelligence decisions, maneuvers, movements. So the battle starts with Ryu moving carefully through the ruins, and then Red Skull moves towards the magnifier but spots Ryu and moves towards him as indicated by the AI matrix. Red Skull tries to stay behind cover. Mach X also joins him in this endeavor. Winter Soldier begins to get into position to use his sniper rifle against Ryu. Hulk moves towards a nearby structure and gets on top of it. Then the leader moves in to support Red Skull. Ken moves to a structure near Ryu. Then we have an event. I drew a card and it resulted in a heroic surge. Ryu and Ken will each get a +5 on their next D20 roll. During turn 2, Ryu moves into line of sight with Red Skull and fires a Hadouken at him. Even with the power surge bonus, he does not hit him. So he uses a fate point to exchange his D20 with Red Skull's D20. And he also uses his Power Blast ability, the single use, to completely destroy Red Skull. Mach X moves into range and is successful in activating one of his devices, shooting at Ryu, but missing. Winter Soldier moves closer, picks up a crate and keeps on moving. Hulk jumps down from the structure and runs towards Ryu. The leader targets Ryu with a mental attack, inflicting a bit of damage. Ken moves closer to the Hulk and inflicts significant damage by spending a fate point to exchange dice and hitting with his Hadouken. Baron Zemo arrives as a result of an event to support the Masters of Evil. He works similar to Red Skull when it comes to the villain templates. On turn 3, Ryu moves closer to the pipe and tries to pick it up, but fails. He shoots a Hadouken at Hulk, inflicting massive damage and freeing him from the leader's mind control. So he was defeated. Hulk leaves the battlefield in a daze. Using his 2 actions, Baron Zemo engages Ken in hand-to-hand combat. He needed to move twice, but cannot attack yet. Winter Soldier throws a crate at Ryu, but using his Fate Point, Ryu avoids the attack. Mach X activates his weapon and blasts Ryu but misses. The leader tries to blast Ryu with a mental assault but fails, and Ken crushes Baron Zemo with a mighty Dragon Punch. Then I drew an event. The leader telepathically threatens Ken, communicating that his minions are on their way to attack his wife, Eliza. But Ken passes his resilience check, dismissing this threat, knowing fully well that Sean, his apprentice, is currently with Eliza, keeping her safe. On turn 4, Ryu critically hits the Winter Soldier with a Hadouken, eliminating him from the fight. Then he takes cover because he is slightly wounded and has no fate points left. Mach X activates his weapon and shoots at Ken, but misses. The leader moves forward and attempts to mind control Ken into attacking Ryu, but Ken resists the attempt. Ken engages the leader in hand-to-hand combat, knocking him against a structure using Tatsumaki Senpukyaku, inflicting terrible damage. The event card resulted in a strange affliction that was probably the remaining effects or residual effects of the leader's mental attack against Ryu, but Ryu overcomes this affliction with his survival check. During turn 5, Ryu moves forward, picks up a metal pipe, and throws it at Mach X, but he misses. The leader attempts to mind control Ken, but fails to do so. Mach X tries to activate his wrist steam shooter to heal the leader, but the device doesn't work. Ken charges at the leader and takes him down for good with a mighty Dragon Punch. He accomplished this by getting a critical hit as a result of activating his deadly attack, single-use power. Then we have an event. The magnifier shoots an energy discharge at Mach X, wounding him slightly. During turn 6, Ryu shoots a Hadouken at Mach X, but he avoids it. Mach X activates his weapon and shoots at Ken, but Ken dodges by spending a fate point. Ken engages Mach X and uses his last fate point to defeat him for good with a Dragon Punch. So Ryu and Ken win this battle. As you can see, things can get somewhat swingy. It's a bit difficult to predict when one of your characters is going to be eliminated or when you are going to eliminate one of the enemies. The dynamic duo rules that I used for this battle provide those additional fate points for Ryu and Ken that were spent during the fight. If I had a complete team of superheroes, probably 3 or 4 of them would have been knocked out or eliminated from the fight. That is, each fate point feels a lot like lives in a video game. Now, when it comes to strategic and tactical analysis of the battle, the general strategy went great. Ryu and Ken took place behind cover, went out into the open and attacked, and then Ryu retreated behind cover because he had spent his fate points already, and Ken went a bit more aggressive because he still had most of his fate points. And as you can see, this one-shot scenario is very simple. It's perfect for a quick game, but things get a bit more complex, more involved when you are playing all of those other scenarios in the campaigns. You have different objectives and goals and missions. The artificial intelligence is going to work differently in those scenarios. Here you only have the penultimate magnifier to serve as a sort of anchor for the patterns of the AI-controlled opponents. So what do I think of Slugfest, solo and cooperative super gaming? I think this game is quite unique. Not exactly in its mechanics, because the rules, the AI matrix that it uses, has already been seen in other board games and skirmish games. However, it has been completely adapted to superheroic gaming. This feels a lot like a role-playing game. It is still in its essence a skirmish game, but because you have connected scenarios, level up rules, it's very easy to play this as a role-playing game. If you play it co-op, you could have your hero and his allies or sidekicks interacting with the heroes and sidekicks of the other players. I think that it's great that you have all of these different scenarios with a lot of variety when it comes to the things that you have to do. You have to do very heroic things in most of them, protecting people, rescuing someone, targeting a specific villain, getting to a certain area or objective, following a theme of stopping some plan before it happens, or neutralizing the machinations of the opposing forces. This is a great game, and it's perfect if you already have some HeroClix figures and maps. You can use them in all of your battles. You could use them with the standard rules or with the modified rules at the end to use those squares and grids in case you prefer to play it like that, but it works great either way. The mechanics are solid. And it's also very easy to tweak or modify the system. For example, in the one-shot battle report that I showed you, when you crashed or were slammed against a piece of the scenery of the terrain, you suffered 1 additional hit point of damage. That is not standard in the rules, but I made it to be so in this scenario. There are also many ways to raise or lower the difficulty level. If you have some problems with a scenario, you can reduce the ranks of the enemy forces, or if you want more of a challenge, you can raise the ranks. Or you could perhaps use the optional rules to turn your heroes into even more superheroic beings, giving them more advantages and skills, and the same could be applied to the enemies. So if you want a fun solo and co-op game where you play battles that feel like a role-playing game session, where you're going to be using your skills to deactivate perhaps devices connected to the scenario, or if you have eliminated the first wave of enemies and you want to make some checks to get additional bonuses during that fight while being surprised by the events, I definitely recommend Slugfest. I also really like it that you can create any villain, any hero that you can think of, but if you want, you can use any of the included templates and example heroes and villains. It's also great that this game is going to be supported. 2 scenarios have recently been released, and you can use all of the scenarios, both the ones included in the core rulebook and the additional ones, as sources of inspiration for your own scenarios. And like I said, if you have some generators or emulators, in fact, I'm going to put a link in the description to a video where I recommend different adventure generators. You could come up with your own scenarios quite quickly, and you could even take the different event decks for specific scenarios and use them in other scenarios to mix and match objectives. You will only need to tweak a few things when it comes to relating those decks or linking those decks to the objectives of particular scenarios. Thank you so much for watching this review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know, and stay tuned for my review of the 2 released scenarios for Slugfest. And thank you so much to those that have been supporting the channel by sending DriveThruRPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.